Morning, everybody. This is David R. Becker here. A day after Thanksgiving Day and Thanksgiving Christmas Day, and so we're here today this morning. I usually do a Sunday, but Sunday was Christmas Day, so I'm doing it Monday morning here. Well, actually, almost like what is it, noontime now? So at noon, noontime lunch Monday morning, and I'm going to show you how to work on translucent paper, Yupo translucent paper. So we're working on translucent paper, and we're going to be using gouache, acrylic gouache though this time. We're going to be using acrylic gouache, and we're going to be using it on translucent watercolor paper. And since it is acrylics, I am going to put on some gloves here. I totally forgot about that because it gets messy with acrylics. So we're going to be trying to do a little acrylic. And this is if you're an acrylic painter and you like acrylics, you're going to love gouache, acrylic gouache. I've done a lot of the heavy-bodied acrylics, and I've done fluid acrylics and stuff. But my favorite acrylic is this gouache acrylic because it's a little bit more like creamy. It's like whipped cream almost, and it's a very creamy substance. And I got one of these palettes here, which keeps it. This is acrylic, and it'll keep it forever, just like it would the other gouache, the watercolor gouache. But this is my acrylic gouache, and it's almost in a tube, so it doesn't dry out when you have it in one of these little containers here. I will put this container that I'm using. I'll put it in the description of the video, and you can. I got it on Amazon. This is a especially airtight one, and so it's kind of neat because there's like a silicone right here, and you can put it on there, and it keeps your acrylics super fine. I've got that on Amazon, and this Yupo paper is translucent. So for those of you that feel like you still don't have the drawing down yet, and you're not quite a great drawer, one thing nice about this paper, it's plastic. It's actually a plastic paper, and it's great with acrylics. A lot of people don't like it for watercolor. I can see sometimes, though I've seen people do some great watercolors with it. But when it comes to acrylic gouache, I love this paper for it. And look at this is a translucent one, so you can see right through it. And so if you need to put your picture behind it and trace, for those students that are beginning and don't have a really great ability to sketch yet or draw, this is one way you can do that. You don't need anything, you just put it underneath there. They do make not the translucent Yupo, which is just white, and it comes in two different weights. One's a little bit thinner, one's a little bit thicker. But this is the one I'm using today, just because I want to show you that if you're, as a student, if you want to put your picture underneath there and draw it and sketch it with a pencil. And I just draw with a pencil, a regular, like a school pencil, and so I just use that to draw. And I didn't trace this one. It's a pretty much easy scene, and I'm actually using these two scenes right here, and I'm putting them together as one. And so I'm kind of I went in there with my regular 2B pencil, or school pencil, and I just drew it up. And with this as being acrylic, it's not like transparent watercolor, and the fact that it's a little bit different. And so I'm going to start out not the same as I do a watercolor, and this is I'm going to start it more like an acrylic painting. And so I'll be putting in the darks first and then put the lights on top. And sometimes I do it like a watercolor when I'm using paper, but this is very slick, and so it's a very slick paper. It's basically plastic paper, but it's just with the plastic gouache paint, acrylic paint, it just slides on there really nicely. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it, and I'm going to take some colors, and I'm going to do the background first. And you do the darks first with acrylic, and not like watercolor. It's a little bit different in that aspect because you're doing the background and you're doing the darks first. So again, a little bit different than when you're doing your watercolor, transparent watercolor, because I'm just going to go on top and get it thicker and thicker. So I'm going to do my background here, and you don't have to even work background to foreground like you do watercolor, because again, you're not working watercolor, so you're basically working like an oil. So you put your darks in first, and then you layer your lights on top of that. I still try to get my big value pattern, which is very important in any kind of thing that you're doing. When it comes to painting, I really worry about that. I make sure that I get my value pattern right. And so That's one thing I don't do different. So here now I'm just taking some of this blue, and I'm just going to kind of put it in here just for now, just kind of block in a bunch of big spots. And this is going to be my foreground, and I'm going to make my foreground cool, my background warm, because look at the sun here. It's in the background shining through these trees, and I want to get that effect. And so I'm just, again, I'm applying the thicker paint, but I'm applying it not too thick yet. I'm just kind of blocking in big areas. And I probably should be doing even darker areas yet, darker than this, but it's okay because I'm just kind of going in there. And if you use it really thick, I'll get rid of my lines, and so I don't want to do that yet. I'm just kind of applying it thinly and getting in there and just kind of putting it down and getting like a transparent look for this acrylic, just so I can kind of see where things are going to be placed at, what big areas are going to be. In the background, the sky I'm going to keep white probably, and I'm using watercolor brushes for this. Even though it's acrylic, I'm using my watercolor brushes because you can. You know, I can make it thick with the same thing. It's very creamy paint. I really love it that it's creamy and not like hard like the heavy bodied are. The heavy bodied are a little bit more heavy and kind of more solid, and so you're putting water in there to make it, you know, a little bit more creamy. This is more creamy, and it's just really beautiful, beautiful paint. So I'm going to go in here with some bright color here, white it up with my white. And for this, you know, I definitely use white in this aspect because, you know, hey, it's not a watercolor. We don't have to worry about. And actually, I put white, thick white on things because that's one thing about oils and acrylic is that that's one of those things like negative painting for watercolor that makes acrylic painting look so cool. Betsy just came pushing snow with the tractor, so can warm up and watch you today. Oh, hey Betsy. Yeah, we here in Illinois still don't have any snow. It snowed a little bit this morning, very lightly, but we're not accumulating too much of anything, which is fine. But I would like to go skiing, cross-country skiing, so I wouldn't mind having a little bit more snow than we're getting, and not just this cold, cold weather. So here, where it's going to be really bright sunlight here, we're going to put this in here. We're going to put some nice bright, bright colors. And this is called a luminous orange and a luminous red. They're kind of very luminous colors. They're almost like, what do you call it, fluorescent colors. But they're not totally fluorescent. They're just, they call them luminous colors. And so I'm going to put those in as light. And then I'll put the yellow going through the bottom here. And like I said, I should be doing the darks, which I will get to. I'm just kind of blocking in. I'm kind of getting rid of some of the white paper. Us artists don't like white paper to start out with. And so I'm just kind of putting in on top. And since it is acrylic, and I can keep on piling it on top and make it thicker and thicker and darker and lighter and lighter also. I can get in here and get all these little light areas. And which I should do now first, because you do that and you put your lights on top of that. So here I'm going in now with a dark blue. It's called navy blue. And I take a little bit of black with the navy blue, a little bit of purple. I'm just kind of going in here and getting my darks. And it is very different from watercolor in the fact that I think it's the same when it comes to the composition and all the lights and darks. I do that, but it's just a different procedure. Because you know you don't have to worry about getting your wash to be beautiful in the first step. You know, like you can go back in, and actually you want to, and put things thicker and thicker as you go along, and then lighter and lighter and thicker the paint. There are those acrylic painters who don't use it really thick and just use it very thin, but are very tight, and that's fine too. You know, there's all many different ways of using all these different materials and mediums. So here I'm going to use a little bit of this burnt sienna with this dark I have here. And again, I am putting it on pretty thinly yet. You know, I'm going in here and I'm just brushing it on thinly. And then I'm going to get the trees and just going to go in here, get some of the trees going on. I can get some purple and grays in there. I find that a lot of times when I'm using acrylic, I don't mix very much, and so you're using pure pigment. And that sometimes tends to make the painting look too colorful, like it's not realistic. I tend to do that a lot with acrylics for some reason, because with watercolor I let it mix itself, and so I've gotten so used to not mixing colors, and they mix themselves, watercolors in a wet wash and a wet into wet wash, that I start getting kind of lazy, and so I'm not I'm not actually doing. Oops, I forgot to turn off my mic here so that you don't hopefully hear it double. Sorry about that if you heard this double. Let me just check to see if anybody's watching. All right, a few of you watching. I'm going to put this on YouTube later on. And so those that missed it, it'll be fine. You'll be able to see it again and again and again on YouTube. I do it live on Facebook because more people are on Facebook usually. And so I didn't schedule it. I just decided I wanted to do this. I wanted to test it out. These extra little painting times I'm doing, I do it for myself because I want to learn a few things on myself. And so I'm going in here and trying new things. And so this one is Yupo with my acrylic gouache. Acrylic gouache and Yupo. So again, putting the branches in, the tree trunks in. And I'm going to get a lot of them in here. I'm going to try to get a lot. And you notice I'm switching colors and values. I'm not going to make them all the same. Or close. I mean, I'm going to make them close, but then I'll go back in and get the light trees in front and get the thicker stuff. And even like these little branches and stuff, I'm just going to kind of plop in there with hitting the brush downward like this. I'm just kind of hitting it down. Because there are these branches. And then I'll put snow on them. I do have a little bit of this lighter blue, this turquoise blue. I'll mix that in with the yellow. That'll give me kind of a green. I don't have all the colors I normally use, like as with my watercolors and my other. I'm going to have to order some colors that are more to what I use with my watercolors, so I know what I'm mixing. A lot of times I like to use the same colors in the different mediums. But this one I just had whatever I had, I just put down here. And so we got kind of close, but there's a few different ones that I'm not used to. So we'll see. And this one's actually metallic. There's a metallic violet in there that has metallic, kind of a metallic look to it. And so what the heck, I thought I might as well put it in there and just try it. I did this also on a white board, on one of these sign boards that you get like at that you see the political signs made out of. You can go to like a Home Depot or a Menards and get that. They sell them like in 4x2x4, 2 foot by 4 foot sections. Or you can buy a 4x8 sheet and just cut it down to whatever size you want. But they make a bunch of those. They're kind of expensive, but when you cut it down, or wait until the election's over, and if people keep them out there, just grab a couple of them. Don't grab them while the election's going on, because that's stealing. But when they just leave them there afterwards, just go ahead and take them. I'm sure they don't mind that actually, because they never picked it up afterwards, and so you're cleaning up the mess that they left. So here again, I'm going with like little branches of the pine trees and a few more of the. And I'm not sure if you can tell, but it's pretty thick. I'm putting on my brush. It's not as thin as like watercolor. I don't use a lot of water. I'm using pretty much a lot of pigment. I use a little bit more pigment. And the nice thing about this gouache, this acrylic gouache, is that it's gouache, and gouache is opaque, and so that covers really, really well. I mean, it covers whatever you're doing on top of it. You cover up really, really well. And so now we're going to make the background just a little bit lighter again. See, I want the light back here to be warm, and then the foreground to be cool. So I'm just going to kind of flick it on here, flick it on there. And if you're not used to ever doing gouache, or you're only a watercolorist, I recommend sometimes to try other things, because then I think actually this helps my watercolor, because it makes me more aware of using more paint when I'm using my watercolor. A lot of us watercolorists are very stingy with our watercolor, and so we don't use a lot of it. And so I think by me using my doing acrylics and stuff, it tend to make me a little bit more aware that it's the amount of pigment that you use in your watercolor later on when you go back to watercolor that I don't use enough of it, because this really shows a lot of nice features when you put a lot of paint in. You know, it looks better when you put a lot of paint in, because it is acrylic gouache, and so I'm just going to try to make it look thick. You know, I don't have to make it thin. And when with the Yupo paper, it's very slick, and I love how it it slides on really easily. Now that's just a little bit too bright a color. I'm gonna tone it down with a little bit of violet. I do want to make it a little bit darker, and which is really funny because with the acrylic, we go from dark to light, and with the watercolor, you're used to watching me. I always say light to dark, light to dark. But here, it's a little bit opposite, so I'm putting my darks in, and I'll be putting, and it's messy, it doesn't look exactly right yet, but when I put the lights on top of it, you'll start seeing the light afterwards. So it's just a little bit different in that aspect, that, you know, the way you put down the paint and what time you put the darks and lights in, and you still do it, you know, the large lights and darks, the pattern is still there. You still gotta make the pattern. And as you can see how much more vibrant I get with colors. I tend to get a little bit more vibrant because I don't like mixing that much, and so because my watercolors, they mix themselves, right? I always have them mix themselves in a puddle of water. So here now, I should get my little darker darks in here. So let's get some more darker darks. And again, because I'm not used to this palette, I just put out this palette this morning. You tend to get used to a palette that you have, you know, working with. And this one I just put out today. I just put these colors in here because I've never worked with gouache like this yet, all by itself. Gouache. A lot of times I've mixed gouache, the acrylic gouache, and the watercolor together, but it's more like a watercolor painting that I do then. I don't really do it as an acrylic. This I'm doing totally as an acrylic painting, not as a watercolor whatsoever. Because I'm not letting it, you know, like be in here and get really, let it bleed itself together, making a soft edge wash. I'm not doing that at all. I'm just making it all thick paint. So let me get my darks in here. So here, there's a bunch of, you know, I'm just gonna take my brush and watch this. I'm just gonna tap it down. This is probably a Bob Ross technique, right? Happy little trees, happy little trees. So we're gonna take this. So Charlie says, Dave, have been looking for high plate illustration board, the thick one that can accommodate watercolors. Have you ever used it? If so, do you have a source? Thanks. For a board, Strathmore makes a board that a watercolor board but it's not high plate like this. It's not hot press. I think what you're looking for is a Bristol board. I think you should look for a Bristol board. Strathmore makes a Bristol board, and that or like I said, this if you take this is translucent. Yupo, if you take the non-translucent one and then mount it to a board, that's it's always a really, boy, it's really, really flat and sharp, which is really nice. I mean, I really love it. But I don't know of illustration board right now. I stopped using illustration board when I started using a kind of Bristol board kind of paper, or this Yupo. I really love this Yupo though, with the gouache here, with the Holbein Acrylic Gouache. It just slides on, and it just, I love the feel of it. So let's get some more of this. The high plate, boy, I don't know. Ampersand also makes ampersand board also makes a kind of high plate Bristol board type of look. But yeah, I haven't found any of that board wise. So see how I'm keeping the warms in the distance? I'm keeping these warm back here, and as it comes forward, I'm going to give it all into the purplish, dark shadow blue tones up in front here. I'm going to make it all. And again, it's still thin. It's not thick like I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it pretty thick. And again, if you're a watercolorist, this would be very strange for you because we don't work like this in watercolor. We do not put in the darks first, and we don't work like here. I'm working pieces. In watercolor, we pretty much work in areas, in larger areas, and you don't separate from that because you have to make it look very big washes. You need big washes to make things look clean, and so it's a little bit different when it comes to that aspect. It's a little bit different when you're going with acrylic and oils, and that you're doing your darks, and then you put your thick amount of paint on there for your lights. Your lights come on later, and then you put them thick, and so you're physically making your lights pop forward. Like when I put the snow on over here, I'm going to put it on thick. I'll put it in a wet. Here, I'll just do some of it right now. The sky looks like I need a little bit more of this orangey color here. And so I'm going to make this in the sky back here and actually put some of the branches in this kind of orangey color. This is behind the trees in front. And like watercolor paper, you don't always have to cover everything. And here I'm not covering that part where it's white. The paper is actually translucent, and I have a white board behind it. So, but when they go to frame this or something, they have to mount it onto a white board because it's translucent. So you got to make sure that you put a white something behind it. Otherwise, you're gonna have some troubles here. I'll put a little bit of this in here. Unless I put white on top of that, because I still don't mind, as an oil painter, you usually cover everything with oils. But here with acrylics, I still sometimes use the paper as the color of the whatever it is you're doing, like snow. You don't have to put white on there, but usually it works out really well. And actually, for this white that's on the trees in front here, I'm gonna make it more like this bottom picture on the lower right corner here, or lower left corner here. I'm gonna make it more like it's in shadow, so it's not gonna be totally white. And so I'm just going to put it on thick. And again, I am using my watercolor brushes. If you want to use an acrylic brush, the acrylic brushes that have long handles, that's the only difference when it comes to the nylon part of it. It really is not that much different when it comes to nylon brushes, thicker, just the handles are longer. Oh, I see what you're saying. The Bristol eats here, yeah, because some of it's kind of soaks into the paper. But the high plate, Strathmore Bristol board that I had gotten when they used to use that for keyline paste up, is I got a bunch of it from work, and I would use that for a long time. And I still have some of that available. I still have some of that I'm working with. But you're right. I would say it looked for Strathmore Bristol board. I think they have it by plies, and I think you can get a hot ply or like a 7-ply. It goes by how much the weight is and stuff, and so how thick it is, how many plies they glue together. But I found that Strathmore Bristol board by the sheet was what I had used to make it really. Ooh, I put it on my nose. So now I'm putting it on pretty thick. I don't know if you can tell that, but I'm putting it on pretty thick now, and I'm mixing a lot of paint together. And I want this to be thick on top, and it's going to cover up, right over it, so I don't have to worry about transparency like I do with watercolor. I'm just going to go over, and then I put the lights where the lights need to be, like going through the trees here, and even in the background. But if you keep the foreground all in the blues and the violets, and keep all the background all in the oranges, yellows, you'll have it looking separate, because then it'll look like that's the foreground, that's the background. Here we go, putting this on here. And I don't copy the photo to a T, like I'm not a hyper-realist painter, where I'm more of an impressionist, so I kind of get the impression of these two together as one. And when I get closer to this area with my thicker pigments, you know, and even in the edges here, I'm going to take pure white and hit the edges of that, just because the lights will be hitting just on the side here. Side of the trees will have a nice light, and so I can just use pure white on some of the sides of these trees. And you notice I've been using this one brush for the whole painting. I like flat brushes for some reason. I'm not sure why. I just like the fact that I can make a small line and I can do it like a big swoosh of paint and a small line both at once. And so I really love that, the fact that I can do that. And again, this is not like oils where it's thicker and it's very, you need that thicker bristle brush. This is very creamy, so my brush is fine. It comes really well. I can use it well enough that it just it smoothly puts it on there. The side of that. You know, people are very used to when they work certain things like heavy-bodied acrylics. They like their long brushes and they work it more. I'm working this down flat. They like to work on an easel. You know, so I'm still more of a watercolorist in that aspect. I do a lot of watercolors. And so this is kind of like a mixture of me of watercolor and acrylics, with a little touch of oil being the thickness of the paint that I'm putting on. Let's get a little bit of white through here. And this is just a little sketch I'm doing here. It's not, you know, no big thing. I just wanted to kind of show you guys how to use some of this acrylic gouache on Yupo. The Yupo acts a lot different than when you put in watercolor on it, and people are always asking, does it stick to it, you know, and acrylic definitely, I mean, you're putting acrylic on acrylic paper, because it's plastic, and actually that's what acrylic is. It's kind of a plastic polymer in it, so it works great together. It works absolutely wonderful together. I just like the creaminess that you get, and then you can put it on thick, and it is very, like you were talking, Charlie, it's a very plate. It's like, doesn't absorb at all. And so by using the non-porous Yupo paper, it's kind of like that. I think you'd probably like this. I mean, I love Bristol board. That's my favorite for watercolors. So that's how come I think I like this, is because it's kind of like that plate. Like the plate Bristol board. I only started using that only because back when they used it for key lime paste up, when they got the computer came into town, and they got rid of all their key lime paste up, and they had to be all digitally, and so all the digital work was coming in, and so they threw all that paper out, and so I just picked it out of the garbage. I said, no, this is the greatest paper, and so I got to learn how to use it for watercolor, and I loved it. And also I like the price because they were throwing it away, so I got a bunch of sheets of that. Here, I'm just putting some dark. Now let's put a little light on top of here. So you see I'm getting more and more detailed as you go along. So that's one thing too, like in watercolor, you work your large areas first, and you just get down and dirty as you're going down. You get smaller and smaller details. So in that aspect, it's kind of the same. You know, you go from large areas to smaller areas and more details. Putting little things in the water. Yeah, I'm a big dumpster diver. I do a lot of dumpster diving when it came to, especially from when you're working at an agency and they're throwing away beautiful paper. You know, it's amazing what they throw away in those big companies, because they're switching from computers to whatever. It's like, oh, come on. So here I'm going to go with a light right down the center here. Make it nice and thick. Look how thick I'm making it. I'm putting it pure thick. And I want it to be clumpy because I want it to really physically stand forward. So that's one thing that watercolor doesn't have, is the thickness of the paint. But if you use gouache, like gouache watercolor, like not the acrylic gouache, but then you can do that too with watercolor, which I've been doing lately, and actually now I even like it more here with this acrylic gouache. I think I'm going to make my water a little bit. See, one of these has to be darker or lighter right here so that you differ the, I'm going to make the water a little bit darker. And then what the palette I'm using is just a meat tray. It's like one of those styrofoam meat trays. I used to buy them for my paint parties I used to do, and I still have a bunch of them left over, and so they're great for that. They're great for just, I just throw it away, or you just keep on going on top of it. So I don't mind that at all. So dark into the water again here. Reflect some of the trees from the distance into the water. And I'm trying to get a little bit grayer too. I tend to, like I said, I tend to get really way super colorful with my acrylics. Like I don't gray them down enough. Again, and the reason that happens is because in watercolor I let them mix themselves a lot of times in a puddle of water, which is my float your pigment thing that I talk about all the time. And here that doesn't do that. You're mixing in all your soft edges and you're mixing your colors together. And since I don't mix very many colors together in watercolor, I don't mix many here either. I'm putting the little tree trunks in here now. And I do have a couple of these luminous colors in there, which I'm not sure how long they'll last. But I'm just doing this as a demonstration, and so it's just a little sketch, more of a sketch for me. I would do this again, and I would do it big. Like this is very small. You know, it's only, what is this? Maybe 10 by 14. So it's pretty small painting. But with gouache and practice, sometimes I tell my students, work smaller first. Don't work so big yet in the very beginning. You can always get bigger and bigger as you go along. Now this in the center there, just a little bit too orangey, I think, and so I'm just going to tone it down a little bit, or too red. Just going to turn it down a little bit, just a little bit, just so it's not so vibranty. I think you just said that it's dropping some of the frames. I'm hoping this works okay. It's not dropping too many frames. My connection must be bad or something. So how do you make it look really shiny like that? You make all those things in there. I'll use my white and yellow and a little bit of this luminous orange, and I will paint those things in and really close, and they go from a dark right away to a really light area. It could be the little branches and stuff turn like yellow because it's so bright that it's changing the color. Oh, my stream quality is affected. Oh, sorry guys, I hope it's not too bad. I'm almost done. I'm going to do a little bit more with the foreground lights here. Kind of make it a little bit smoother. A little bit thicker. And not so vibrant, trying to make it a little bit more together. And then hit it with pure white on the tips here, where the light is just hitting the tops of there. Get that really quick. And also, some of these would be totally white back there. And then the nice thing is when you take the tape off, you get a really nice straight edge there too. Though I recommend mounting this stuff on a board, Yupo, and also just watercolor paper. I kind of liked and lately is mounted on a board. So, and then you don't need to put a frame on it or a mat on it because you can put a nice thick frame on it without glass. Especially this one is acrylic, so you don't have to put glass on it. But then you do need it to be right able to fit into a customized, not a customized frame, but a standard size frame. Thicker snow on the side here. And now I miss some of these darks. I'm going to go back in with some darks underneath here. Show like that is not totally dark, and there's got some branches. Away from that. Here, making the trunks of the trees just slightly darker. Away from the I think that's almost it, guys. I think we'll just call it a day. If you have any more questions, you can always type them in there later. I will go back and look to see if there's any other questions. And then I will put this on YouTube also, so that my YouTube people that are not Facebook, because there's a lot of people that don't do Facebook, and so I'll put it on YouTube, and you can ask questions there again too. This still seems a little bit kind of rough. I kind of like the snow to be piled in there really nicely and soft. I'm just putting pure white and swishing it across there just to hit the light there, and then maybe this is a little bit of a shadow. Flickering light through here. So you just kind of make it through, like the sun is right there, so the reflections will be along it. And here's kind of through there. Hits the top and the sides. And I think that's about it, guys. Let me just do a couple more things and we'll call it a day. And thanks for sticking around and watching, guys. Alright, so let me take my glove off so I can't take the tape off. Let me show you what we ended up with. Take the tape off. Again, I did this on Yupo paper. It's Yupo Translucent. I used a translucent paper. They make three different types. The translucent, and the other two are just on white, and they're not translucent. Though they, you can put a light against them, and you can still see through a little bit on the Yupo, because it is plastic. But then there's a thicker one too. There's a thinner Yupo and a thicker one. I don't really recommend the thick one. You don't really need. It doesn't wrinkle, even when you're using watercolor, and it doesn't really wrinkle because it's basically plastic, and so it's not absorbing anything. So here you go. There's the picture finished. So have fun. Try it. Give it a shot. It's always fun to try new things, and so that's what I did today, just to try and see how it would handle the opaque gouache. And again, it's what I used again was Holbein Acrylic Gouache, and with the Yupo paper, and this is the translucent. See the translucent paper down here, and so it comes in a white little tube like that. And if you in the description, I'll put that palette that I got, and so I'll just cover that with the top. And it's got a silicone thing, so it'll keep it nice and fresh, so you don't have to worry about them drying out. And so even though they're acrylics, they will not dry out. And a lot of people put them in the refrigerator. I don't think you even have to do that. They keep it cooler, I guess. But I've never done that, and I don't think you really need to. And so, any more questions, just ask away. And again, I will put it on YouTube. And if you ever join me, try to join me for my paint-alongs on Thursday. I do Thursday night paint-alongs. And so get my go to my website at BeckerArt.net or davidrbecker.com. And I do a newsletter that tells what we're repainting that day, or that on the Thursdays. And just you can get a newsletter or just get it from my website. So either way, have a great Monday, the rest of the Monday, and keep warm. I know we have to here in Illinois. All right, until next time, we'll see you then. Bye.